It's no secret Hong Kong has a serious housing problem. For decades, Hong Kong has been plagued by some of the highest property prices in the world. In July of 2021, Xia Baolong, the top Beijing official in Hong Kong, gave the city a deadline of 2049 to get rid of the two most visible signs of its ongoing housing woes: subdivided flats and so-called cage homes. And the same month, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam pledged to make housing a priority in the final year of her term as the head of the city's government.
The Chief Executive will first address the Council.
毫無疑問，數以十萬計嘅市民居住環境有待改善，唔少家庭置業困難，仍然係政府極需處理嘅社會問題。
But can the government solve an issue that's dogged the city for decades? Today, the data tells a troubling story. Over the last decade, an average of 29,000 public and private flats hit the housing market each year. Over the same period, the city population rose nearly 8.6% to 7.5 million people. Property prices have continued to climb, while the size of the average Hong Kong flat has gotten smaller and smaller. For Hong Kong's poorest residents, living spaces are even more claustrophobic.
呢度咧就大概咧120尺左右，然後咧呢個咧就係廚房。平時咧就我太太咧就會喺呢度煮飯，但係咧呢度太熱啦，中午煮飯咧就成身汗。平時咧我就喺呢度瞓覺嘅，然後我太太同埋女咧就瞓下邊，我個仔就瞓上邊。咁咧兩張床咧，大家咧都瞓得舒服啲。
Wang Ng lives in a 120 square foot subdivided flat with his wife and two children in Tai Wo Hao. He's one of the more than 200,000 people living in these tiny flats, which are usually carved out of larger units and have become darkly emblematic of Hong Kong's housing crisis.
住咗差唔多3年幾，我嚟咗香港之後一直都係住劏房，住劏房就差唔多住咗7年啦。唔係，其實我哋話唔係中唔中意喺呢度住。而家咧就係咩？而家咧細路仔咧做功課咧都係要喺自己嘅碌架床上邊自己做功課嘅。當然啦。 你話住喺呢個環境，細路仔多多少少咧就係有啲唔開心咯，但係咧都係冇辦法，因為咧佢阿爸阿媽窮嘛，係嘛？就係呢個原因咯。
Across the border in Mainland China, Wang lived in a 1,000 square foot flat. Now in Hong Kong, he pays more than $7,000 a month for a flat that's smaller than the average parking space.
我當初嚟香港嗰時咧，我都估唔到會住咁細嘅劏房，所以咧就覺得咧，但係咧你嚟咗之後咧，就你既然你選擇咗呢條路咧，就要堅持行落去咯。我就係咁講咯。
The main issue of the subdivided flats and also the cage homes, in fact, due to the lack of land supply, because these two kind of housing problems is so important, because it is a measurement of the poor living standard and poverty of a state or a city. So if your city has a cage home and also the subdivided units, that means there must be some problem of the government in getting the land or to solve the problems of the citizens.
The argument for why Hong Kong struggles so much with housing often boils down to claims that there are too many people and not enough land. But is that true?
Many people think the problem facing us today is that we don't have land. Okay? But my view is that we have too much land. The developed land accounts for only about 20% or more. Majority of the land are not developed.
Still, Carrie Lam's administration aims to remedy the housing crisis by securing more land through a controversial reclamation project off the coast of Lantau Island that would provide 1,700 hectares of new land. Critics say the project is too expensive. It would cost half of Hong Kong's fiscal reserves and that it would wreak havoc on the local marine environment. Others point to alternative sources of buildable land that are often overlooked. These include vast amounts of property held by private developers, who some blame for contributing to the housing crisis.
Well, I think that is a wrong perception. I believe most developers actually would like to have buyers for their flats. In terms of regulations and land premium negotiation, the process can be shortened. Well, for urban redevelopment, for example, because of the threshold, it usually takes a number of years. Premium negotiation usually took a longer time than we would expect, and that could be in months or even to years. Well, first of all, we welcome, the CE kind of initiative to increase land supply. I think for Hong Kong long-term competitiveness, we need to have a steady land supply. The increase of land supply can come from various sources. For example, agricultural land or some brownfield land can be rezoned to encourage development.
The government says it has identified enough land to meet its public housing goals for the next 10 years. These subsidized flats are vital to moving poor residents out of subdivided units and into more livable housing. But the queue is long. On average, Hong Kong residents need to wait 5.8 years for public housing. Others, like Wong, who moved to Hong Kong from the mainland, have to wait even longer.
而家咧，我哋咧係2014年開始，2015年開始申請公屋嘅，到而家啱好係6年多3個月，到而家都未一啲消息都冇。住劏房咧，可能咧到而家到申請攞到公屋咧，差唔多要10年，人嘅一生有幾個10年咧，講實下就好無奈咯。 係嘛？香港政府又唔幫助我哋，等於講佢又唔話我就聽講話有好多嗰啲空咗嘅單位咧，佢唔攞出嚟分俾我哋，咁都係冇用㗎。
The government says housing is a priority, and that it's working towards solutions to provide a place to live for the city's poorest.
We are doing all we can to deal with the land supply and housing issues. Well, housing is an issue. Everybody cares. Director shares comment about the living conditions in Hong Kong, particularly those in the subdivided flats, concern us very much. We at the government, of course, will do whatever we can to erase this subdivided flat unsatisfactory living conditions. We'll do our very best to press ahead in terms of not just land supply, but also subsidized housing construction.
But many housing experts doubt that anything short of a dramatic overhaul of the city's housing system can solve a problem that's haunted Hong Kong for so long. The 2049 deadline Beijing has set for the complete eradication of subdivided flats may seem to be a long way off. But Hong Kongers like Wong say they're not banking on a future that's still decades away.
等於講我哋咧都可能等唔到2049年啦。 係嘛？因為而家先至2021年，仲有28年喎，28年係咩情況你都唔知啦，係嘛？